Namaste and welcome to Atharva Forum. The outsized influence of the US, whether it is modern culture, global economics, and new technologies, is everywhere around us. We watch American shows, gorge on American fast food, and shop on American apps, and even navigate our ways through traffic on American technology. The outsized influence of US on matters of religion, however, is hardly ever discussed. Today, we talk about what shapes the American view of religious freedom around the world, who influences these views, and what it means for us as a country. We are going to cover the USCIRF, the United States Commission for International Religious Freedom. I'll just refer to the USCIRF as the Commission in this conversation because it's a long abbreviation. I would first like to welcome Aravindan Neelakantanji. Namaste, Aravindanji.
Namaste.
In the seminal book Breaking India, which you co-authored with Rajiv Malhotra ji, you have extensively covered the IRFA and the Commission. The book itself is an outcome of extensive research that was done by you and outlines the malefic nexus of the Christian right in the US and how the Commission simply acts as a tool in their hands to intervene in the religious affairs of other nations. Just as a background, the Commission was created in 1998 by the International Religious Freedom Act, IRFA, under the former President of the United States, Bill Clinton. Right from the start, IRFA as well as USCIRF have been regarded by many as a way to facilitate the global spread of Christianity in developing nations. So Aravindaji, would you like to share a few words about the IRFA and the Commission on International Religious Freedom?
Yeah. See, the International Religious Freedom Act, IRFA, was passed into law in 1998 during, as you rightly said, Bill Clinton presidency. And it was done under heavy lobbying from the Christian right. Clinton supported this in exchange for the Christian support on various legislations that he wanted. The Act set up three bodies: an ambassador at large for international religious freedom within the State Department, US Commission of International Religious Freedom, that is USIRF, that we are going to discuss in detail, and a special advisor on international religious freedom within President's National Security Council. That act itself originated as a bill introduced by Republican Representative Frank Wolf on behalf of conservative Christian groups. The impetus goal was to facilitate mechanisms to bind the Christian populations in developing nations to the deep right-wing Christian organizations in the United States. Later, Alan Dehert noted this, that what were the conditions underlying the legislative initiative? The first condition is the globalization of Christianity, the tectonic shift of the Christian population to the developing world of Asia, Africa, and Latin America created a constituency around the world that communicates with an American constituency here at home. So this is the basis of this particular act. The act aims to create a strategic resource out of Christian populations living in developing countries, because United States understood something very important, that the center of gravity of Christianity is shifting. And when the center of gravity of Christianity is shifting from the West to the developing countries, there is also an asymmetry of power. The asymmetry of power is this, that the control is with the West. The population is in the East. So is in the developing countries, in the post-colonial countries. So this kind of population can be used as very, very clear theo-colonial force. So that is the purpose of this particular act. And USIRF is just a tool, a very effective tool, very strong tool for this particular legislation, which in turn, for this particular act, which in turn is the creation of the Christian right.
Aravindaji, in other words, the Act essentially legitimizes the global spread of Christianity by organizations in the US through an interventionist approach. And ironically, the Act has no legitimacy within the US itself, and which even prompted Robert Seapley, who the first ambassador at large that you talked about for international religious freedom, to say that the Act presents the potential for hubris, arrogance, and hypocrisy. Seapley himself, by the way, was associated with World Vision for 11 years. And for 4 years, as you mentioned in the book, he served as president of Eastern Baptist Theological Seminary. Richard Land was a former commissioner. He was named by Time as one of the 25 most influential evangelicals in America. Nina Shia, a former commissioner, has been known to be close to several Christian organizations. In fact, the Association of Ambassadors at Large and commissioners with Christian groups is more a rule rather than an exception. Now, the Act itself allows the Commission to make policy recommendations to the President of the United States, the Secretary of the State, and the US Congress. Every year, the Commission releases a report on religious freedom in different countries, categorizing them as countries of particular concern, or CPC, and countries in special watch list, or SWL. If a country is designated as a CPC, the Commission recommends the US administration to act against it in different ways, such as by imposing sanctions, denying visas to its citizens, or otherwise just restricting trade and business. And given the mission of spreading Christianity that you also emphasized very well, the Act originally recommended sanctions against countries that prevent proselytization. And even today, the reports on religious freedom specifically mention hurdles to religious conversion. The US administration, however, ends up deciding what to do based on other factors, typically the business interests of American corporations. So Aravindanji, this seems to be based on the enormous influence that US wields today, and the influence that the Christian right operates around the world. Could you also tell us maybe a little more deeply about how the Association of Christian Right in the US works along with the US CIRF?
Now, see, the problem with the Christian right in the United States is that during the Cold War, in a very interesting way, the Christian right had to be kind of marginalized. And also at the same time, it should be used. But why it should be marginalized? Because you cannot use a Christian right to fight against a secular enemy like Soviet Union. They get a totalitarian ideology, and the totalitarian ideology has to be fought. But at the same time, it was a very secular ideology. So they had the advantage of science and technology. They could launch a Sputnik, and there was this great propaganda space competition, space war. So to fight against all that, they had to revamp their own infrastructure, their own educational system. So you cannot allow creationist loonies and right wing into the educational system or military strategies. At the same time, you have to use the Christian right for making the people very robust and see the whole thing as a kind of a holy war against Soviet Union and communism. So they have started, the United States administration has started a judicial use of the Christian right after the Cold War. Now, these Christian right wings have to be used against other developing countries. So they had a particular kind of what you can call the flag bearing mission for the Western countries. This is true for almost all the Western countries. It is especially true for the United States. So the United States, what it did was it started creating a lot of think tanks, right-wing think tanks. Like, for example, there was one ethics policy and the promotion center was there. And with the help of this kind of EPPC, with this kind of organizations, they started creating a kind of a narrative. And the most important shift happened in the Christian right wing. The Christian right wing started using purely secular jargon. So no longer they used to talk about idolatry, no longer they used to talk about the sinners, no longer they used to talk about the hellfire. Rather, they would talk about untouchability, they would talk about human rights violations, they would talk about women's rights and all those kind of things. The things are secular. At the same time, the emphasis would be this. These secular evils are the result of a particular kind of a culture that is not Christian. Okay, so to create this, they had to have a lot of think tanks. They did that. They created this particular narrative of a secular evil existing in countries like India, and that has to be countered. And how that would be countered? That is being done by the proselytizers. So now, for example, I will give you one example. The World Vision comes. World Vision comes and works in Orissa. And in Orissa, they create a problem between scheduled communities and scheduled tribes. What happens? If you are a scheduled tribe, if you get converted to Christianity, you will still have the rights. You will still have the concessions that come from the emancipation program of the government. You will have the reservation rights. But if you are an SC and you got converted to Christianity, then you would lose your SC status. So you won't be entitled to the concessions that the government gives. What the World Vision did was, it started getting fake ST certificates for the SC converts of Christianity. Okay. And of course, you cannot prove all this. The conflicts started arising because the ST people were feeling that their legitimate rights are getting used by these converts who are already getting some kind of benefits from the World Vision, and they are also getting benefits from the government. Now, the World Vision also had cultivated politicians here, like for example, Radhakant Nag. So they know how to navigate through the system. They know how to navigate through the system. They know how to do media management. So they come with all this and they start working in India. Now, what the poor tribals do, they get angry. Their community was getting divided. Whenever there is a conversion in the tribal community, the entire tribal community stands to lose. I remember in 1998 around, India Today reported something that they got converted a particular community priest from the tribal community. And this was sent by Staines in one of his dispatches back home. You remember Staines, right? So he says that this particular guy got converted and the entire community came and begged him and returned back. And this guy mercilessly told, I have gone to Jesus Christ and I don't care what you do, I am quitting. So this kind of traumatic events were happening. So the tribals reacted the way they react. They got angry. They don't have a means to the media management. They don't have means to the legal or the political system. So when they react, what happens? This is when the actual intervention comes. What happens? Only the reaction is focused. The provocations are not focused. Just the reaction taken out of context and shown. And how does it look? It looks like the World Vision people, the missionaries coming here and working for the upliftment of the poor tribal communities, and the vested interests in Indian society who want to keep the tribals under subjugation, they are fighting against the missionaries. So this is the kind of narrative that is taken. See this narrative. At the surface, it is very secular. It does not use any of the religious jargons, but deeper it is religious. So you create a narrative like this, then you submit it to the Western media, you submit it to the powerful government channels. Then what happens? Then you become a victim of the entire events. And the victims become the aggressors. The aggressors become the victims become the aggressors. And this provides a kind of a justification for US intervention. Like this, events after events after events. So this kind of justification for US interventions get piled up somewhere in the United States. And they can always play it. They can always play it through the media, through the movies, through the comics books. They will play it. And then when the actual intervention comes, it comes when the United States knows that it is economically profitable for them. So this is how the US-based think tanks work in tandem with USIRF. So USIRF is a tool in the hands of the corporates, the hands of the evangelists. So in the hands of the evangelists, it is a very good tool for converting the people. Okay, to spread the gospel. The hands of the corporates, it is a very good tool for control of the entire nation and its economy. That is how it operates.
So Arvindaji, you gave an example of the 1998 event, and so and that's when USCIRF was set up as well. And I just to take your conversation forward, I also want to focus specifically on India for this next part of my question, which is essentially the Commission's bias against Hinduism, which is obviously springing from the role of the Christian groups. But I also want to bring in to the conversation the role of the Christian groups here, the groups which are located in India. And initially, when the Commission started giving its reports out on religious freedom, there were some groups in India which protested against the Commission itself, indicating that it is an interference and such an interference is unwarranted. However, they also played a characteristic double game, I would say, by having individuals such as John Dayal provide their testimony on how the Indian government acts against the interests of the church. And way back in 2001, the report mentioned reconversion of Christians to Hinduism, Ghar Wapsi, although they didn't use the word Ghar Wapsi then, but they did mention that such reconversion is a concern. And in fact, this finds a place in the 2020 report as well as a concern. On the other hand, the atrocities of Christian militant groups such as NLFT in Tripura are hardly ever mentioned even to this day, which goes back to the point you were making about, how does this all come about? People only talk about the last event. By 2003 and 2004, the Catholic Bishops' Conference of India were very vocal in their stance that the Commission recognize India as a country of particular concern, CPC. In simple terms, what happened is they changed, their stance and were actually requesting the US to interfere in India's own affairs, which is a trope that consistently repeats itself even today. So Arvindanji, I have a couple of questions here. One is your views on the role of the Christian groups within India through CIRF in the spread of anti-Hindu narrative. Also, perhaps a related question that I want to ask is, we are talking about the period when the UPA government was also in power, 2004 to 2014. And it has been sympathetic to rampant proselytization. And, do you think this combination of such a conversion-friendly government and an interventionist commission led to an exponential increase in the anti-Hindu narrative?
Well, let me start with this. You talked about the 2001 USARF report. In 2001, we were seeing a lot of NLFT attacks. Entire families were getting killed. Houses were getting burned. Okay. But the USARF report didn't care about all those things. In Arunachal Pradesh, the NLFT and NSCN terrorists were going, they were threatening the villagers to get converted to Christianity. The entire villages, they were telling them to get converted to Christianity. They were not mentioned. And what about the basic human rights of people? Let me tell you an example from my own life. Okay. My mother was diagnosed with the cancer in 2001. When we were coming back to the house, the report has been got from the hospital, we were coming back to the house. Okay. And the two, I can call it missionaries or proselytizers, they were there. And they didn't tell us to get converted. They said that, okay, you come for this particular prayer group. So we will pray for your recovery and all those kind of things. We said, no, you go and then take care of yourself. So we just told them to get out. And then we found out that there is a network in the hospital with the nurses. The hospital itself is a Hindu hospital, the nurses and people. There is a network. And that network tells, okay, this particular person is having cancer. So you go and approach that particular house. Now, just think about it. A person is in trauma. Okay. Deep psychological distress. And somebody barges into the house, use that particular distress to sell their religion. Now, this is a basic violation of human rights. This would not go into USIR report. But had I reacted, had I just slapped the person and told that person to get out, that would have entered into the USIRF report. Okay, so this is the format of the USIRF report. Now, I want to emphasize one particular thing here, okay, very clearly. We are not going to discuss about the neutrality of USIRF report. No, this USIRF report is not a neutral report. It is a criminal act against Hindus and Hinduism. So we are discussing a crime that the US is committing against the Hindus, committing against every native religious tradition, every native spiritual, indigenous spiritual tradition. Okay, so here what we are going to do is we are going to analyze the mindset of a theopath, okay, a religious pathological mindset that wants to use the jargons of freedom and democracy to facilitate conversions and thus a kind of a religious genocide of people. Okay, that is what these people are gaining. That is what we are right now looking at. So there is going to be no semblance of neutrality. There is going to be no justice in their reports. And who are all the collaborators in this particular crime? That is the actual question, right? Who are all the collaborators here? In the case of UPA government, let me be very blunt, most probably the chairperson of UPA, Mrs. Antonio Maina Sonia, she fancies herself as most probably the Constantine of India. Most probably she thinks that she has got a divine mandate to convert India. Okay, the entire first family of Sonia Congress, they think that they have a divine right to convert India. Okay, so what they have been doing is that they have been weakening the institutions of India. The Indian institutions, despite all its problems, they were against US intervention. So they are against USIRF entering India. Even under UPA rule, they did not give permission for USIRF to come and officially do investigations in India and all that. At the same time, the churches. The church was, as you rightly said, it was playing a double game. It was telling at once that it would adhere to the Constitution of India. In fact, this is a church strategy. Okay. For example, in the canonical law of the Catholic Church, the minimum marriage age for girls was very low, like 12 or 14. It was only changed recently. And the church stand was that this is our canonical law age, but you can adhere to the law of the land in which you are there. But if you are powerful enough to change the law of the land, then it is well and good. The same thing, the same strategy they are adopting here. So they are saying, okay, we will right now adhere to whatever the law of the land is, but at the same time, we will send individual capacity people to go and give testimony. So, as you said, John Tayal went and gave testimony. Then another one person was that Yesra Sarguna. He was the head of Tamil Nadu Minorities Commission's head at that time, when DMK was in power. Now DMK is back in power. So he was also for going and giving testimony in front of USIRF. So these people are the collaborators. They are the proselytizers in India. They want to destroy Hinduism in India. They are waging a war. Go through the entire evangelical literature. The entire evangelical literature is essentially a war literature. A war literature. They declare war on Hinduism. They said about, for example, they talk of crusades. Okay. Prayer crusades, campus crusades. So they talk and they have this war vocabulary, war imagery. They are fighting against Hinduism, and they are seeing an ally. They are seeing a compatriot in USIRF. So they will be collaborating, and to collaborate, right now the law is not allowed. So despite the fact that UPA was there, the entire government machinery was not allowing, so they were not vocal about it. But now what has happened? Now you have got a government that is within single inverted quotes Hindu nationalist. So you are telling that this government itself is against us. how this government was against you? This government saved the Christian missionary abducted by the Taliban. This government saved a lot of Indian nurses, majority of whom happened to be Christians, from the clutches of ISIS. This government saved a lot of fishermen in the eastern coast of Tamil Nadu who happened to be Christians, many of them who happened to be Christians, from Sri Lankan army. Right? So there is this theology of ingratitude. If you are really grateful, you should tell these things also. It's okay. There are, let us say, I am not telling, let us say there are some conflicts and there are some violent conflicts and you are hiding your side of the story. You are just telling what the opponent did and you are going and complaining. At least you should have the basic human courtesy to also report what this government has done for you. It has gone out of the way and it has done for you. Because you are citizens of this nation. It didn't discriminate you. It didn't allow you to get beheaded by the Taliban. It saved you. But you are not reporting that. So this is a typical behavior of a collaborator in genocide. The collaborator in genocide, he wants to maximize the hatred against his own people. It is like a Jew going and collaborating with the Nazi soldiers. So you are an Indian, just because you have changed your religion, you are going and you are collaborating with a foreign agency that wants to use these reports to have control over the sovereignty of your own motherland. That is why when you convert your religion, you become denationalized. So this is actually a very good example, a very great proof of the fact that when you convert your religion, you may be born in India, but you somehow become less Indian. It's a very sad fact, but this is a fact. At least the Christians who are watching this, the Indian Christians who are watching this, they should realize what their leaders are doing. They are doing betrayal and treachery against their own motherland. And they are becoming willing tools of a foreign power. So they should make sure the ordinary Indian Christians, whom I am sure they are as patriotic as any ordinary Indian Hindu, let us hope so, they should prevail upon their leadership and tell that this is ugly, this is almost like collaboration in a genocide.
So Aravindanji, you rightly said that when we are discussing the USCIRF and the reports, we are not discussing their neutrality. We are discussing the criminal aspect of what the commission does in the name of reports, in the name of interference, and their entire anti-Hindu stance, as well as sometimes even touching upon the sovereignty of our nation in terms of what they do. And just to expand upon that, I would like to maybe come upon some of the points that the reporters raised last year, the 2020, where they talk about assault on religious minorities through national level policies that violated religious freedom. That's their own words. But the report talks about the Citizenship Amendment Act, the CAA, the National Registry of Citizens on NRC that was done in Assam. The Article 370 revocation in Kashmir, mob lynchings linked to cow slaughter, tightening of FCRA rules and anti-conversion laws. And the report also looks at very specific events, and you talked about what goes into the report and what does not go into the report. And in this case, they talk about the case of Tabriz Ansari, for example, and the news that was around that event. The Delhi riots that happened after anti-CAA protests turned violent. And as I said earlier, even mass conversions through Ghar Wapsi, which the report claims as without interference from authorities. And what happens is the report sources information from prominent media houses and journalists, but many of their statements have no source and are nothing short of propaganda. And the CPC status expectedly was rejected by the Indian government. It was not considered by the Trump government also at that point. And in fact, the Indian government, as you have also mentioned, has consistently rejected these reports from the commission, stating that India is a secular country and the commission has no business poking its nose into our internal affairs. So, so Aravindanji, what I would like to know is, with the change in the government, in the US, with Joe Biden coming in, does the CPC status mean anything for the India-US relationship? Does that even come into the picture? Will the US, for example, consider the status, the CPC status, as a leverage to curb the growing influence of India in in the global stage?
We can be almost 100% sure that this is going to happen. One of the reasons is that today, the present Biden government, they have a strong support from the left. Okay. Now you have to understand what is the left in India actually is. The left ecosystem in India, it consists of the academics and the media. The media and academicians, particularly of the social sciences in India, and the media, they have been sponsored, they were actually sponsored by Soviet Union. So after the collapse of Soviet Union, the whole thing has been hijacked in a way by the United States. As a very good, it is a ready-made system. They don't have to do any extra work to penetrate into India. So they have hijacked the whole thing and they are using it for their leverage. Now, when in 1998, I think most probably 1998, 99, in United States, American-born academics and others, they joined together and they formed a BJP watch group. S.P. Uday Kumar, who was a great anti-nuclear activist, he was part of this particular watch group. Okay, so US has already created this kind of small structures, and for the Indian academicians on the left, media people, this is a great thing. For example, to become a reporter of Washington Post, to become a columnist in New York Times, it's a very great thing for them. So those kind of crumbs are thrown to them to write anti-India reports. And these reports get piled up, and the name given to them was, as you know, in Breaking India, the name given to these is atrocity reports. So this atrocity report just gets piled up, and then they can be used as a leverage against India. Now, why against India? That is the question that we have to ask. Now, from an evangelical point of view, purely from a Christian evangelical point of view, the very presence of Hindus is a negation of the Christian worldview. Just like how the very presence of Jews is a negation of the Christian worldview, in the same way the presence of Hindus is a negation of Christian worldview. There can exist a nation successfully as a democracy and can advance in technology and economy and still pagan is something that cannot be accepted. That nation has to be undemocratic, the nation has to be authoritarian, the nation has to subjugate its people, the nation has to be a nation under a tyrant. That is how they want to project it. That is the expectation. So if you are getting police who can project their own nation as they want, as their masters want their nation to be projected, then they would promote them. Okay. So these people promote such a picture. Those pictures are bought by the policy makers of Biden administration. And then it will be used against India, 100% sure. And they would also love to see India being ruled by a person who is at least of a quasi-Western origin. Okay, that is a very great, civilizational trend. If you look at all the interviews that Rahul Gandhi gives, you will find that he always creates a kind of a I belong to you kind of a sense with the Western media people, with the elite. You could have seen that. He is very at ease when he is in a Christian gathering. He came to Kanyakumari district where he lived and he attended the mosques, Christian mosques. And you can find that he is very much in place. At the same time, the same person, when he is, going and visiting a Hindu temple, he acts like a papu. The same person, when he is in a Christian setting, he is acting like a professional. So the point is, in Rahul Gandhi, in Priyanka, in the first family of the Congress, you have a civilizational triumph of the West over a pagan culture. So they would love to dislodge Modi. And Modi is not even swearing by the Nehruvian principles, which are ideologically quasi-West. He is swearing by Hinduism. He is going and he is attending the Maharati in Ganga. Right? When these kind of things happen, they send strong signals that this is a pagan civilization. This is a Hindu civilization that is remaining, the last standing pagan civilization. So nothing will please the evangelicals than this pagan civilization getting governed by a neo-Constantine family. So they will do their level best to demonize Modi, to demonize BJP and overthrow it. And all these reports, they are a great tool in their toolkit, their toolbox. These are great tools. So you can be 100% sure that the Biden and the policymakers in the Biden administration would use this. And remember, this is a very interesting thing. With respect to Trump, the mistake that Trump did was he dropped the American, what you can call the manifest destiny worldview of United States. So he's kind of said, okay, I am going to only take care of United States. I don't care what happens to the world. Okay. Now that is something that the West cannot digest. They want the United States to be the big brother, the policeman of all the world. What United States does is the democracy. What United States establishes is the democracy. That is freedom. Now, that is being challenged by Narendra Modi government. Now, Narendra Modi government shows that there can be a democracy that is not Christian, that is very Hindu. A vibrant democracy, a pluralist democracy, that is very Hindu. That is something they can never accept. And so, be assured that the Biden government and the media houses and the policy makers, they will use these reports against Narendra Modi and India.
So Arvindaji, when you were talking about how they work, I was also thinking that the recent coverage that is happening on Kumbh, in the past few months seems to be along the same lines of propaganda that they do against Hindus. And you also talked about the network. I would like to maybe spend a little more time on that, but before I get into the network part, I want to look at a completely different perspective on the commission, which is the increasing role of Islamic organizations in influencing the commission to take action against India. And maybe I'll just take a few minutes to highlight, what has been happening. In September 2020, 14 US senators wrote to the then Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to designate India as a country of particular concern. And as it was not unsurprising that the letter was welcomed by a host of US-based religious groups, such as the International Christian Concern, and there is an Indian American Muslim Council, IAMC, as well. So at this point, I'm going to use some excerpts from a report by Disinfo Labs, whose Twitter handle mentions them as an OSINT group investigating information warfare as well as cyber. And recently they published an investigative report on Islamic groups infiltrating the commission. So let me start with IAMC, Indian American Muslim Council. It was founded by Sheikh Ubaid, a US-based medical practitioner of Indian origin. The Disinfo Lab reports claim that in 2014, IAMC paid a lobby firm called FGR to lobby with the commission and target India. And later in 2018 to 2020, another front called Burma Task Force, also founded by Sheikh Ubaid, hired the same lobby group FGR, purportedly targeting India. One of the ways they do this is using what is called as the DOTO database, DOTO database, standing for Documentation of the Oppressed, which records crimes against minorities in India. While a lot of news articles in the database have been proven to be false by our own mainstream media as well, but the database continues to be used to spread an anti-India and an anti-Hindu propaganda in the West. In fact, during the 2020 lockdown, the narrative of Islamophobia, which was going on, that was developed using the DOTO database and was orchestrated by the ISPR, the PR arm of the Pakistan Armed Forces. Unsurprisingly, linking it to the USCIRF, Samuel Brownback, Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, commented on the COVID-related harassment of minorities in India, of course, referring to the backlash that the Tablighi Jamaat had faced at that time. And the Disinfo Labs report claimed that the DOTO was earlier collecting data through another organization called United Mass Media, which was founded by Syed Qasim Rasool Ilyas, who was a former member of SIMI and is the father of Umar Khalid, the JNU student who was arrested under UAPA. And Syed Ilyas later founded the Welfare Party of India. Now, besides IAMC, there is the ICNA, Islamic Circle of North America, which was set up in 1968, incorporated in 1971. And it has been linked with Jamaat-e-Islami, Lashkar-e-Taiba, and Hizbul Mujahideen, among other players. And it has been a provocative supporter of separatism in Kashmir. So very recently, you had written an article on Swarajya on why India should be concerned about the contents of a recent US Senate memo, which basically linked World Vision with ISRA, the Islamic Relief Agency, an agency that was sanctioned by the US government itself for its links with the precursor to Al-Qaeda. That there's a lot in that report, but what I want to mention is that there is this mind-boggling nexus of organization and fronts who are working together with a single purpose of targeting India. So I have a couple of questions on that, Arvindanji. One is, does the rise of Islamic influence within the Commission, USCIRF, signal a dangerous shift for us? And do you think this would be a much more dangerous repeat of what we have seen with Christian organizations within India clamoring for foreign interference? And the second part of the question is, there seems to be a coordinated assault now coming. There is the Islamic, the Christian, and the leftist influences sort of all coming together now. And we are sort of seeing that in what is happening in recent events as well, especially in the capital, with the farmer protests and things like that. So could you share some light on the Islamic influence as well as the coordinated assault that we are seeing right now?
Now you have mentioned the entire networks, the complete links and everything. Let me just, I don't have much to add with respect to the data because the data is complete as you have very clearly stated. But let me tell you this about the basic psychology behind the whole thing. The West, when it comes to choosing between Hindus and Islamists, it will always stand by the Islamists. It has always happened. Historically, it has happened again and again and again. See, during the First World War, India sent its soldiers to fight in the war on behalf of Britain. And when the war was over, what the Britain did was, it built a mosque. Most probably that was the first mosque in UK. Britain built a mosque to honor the Muslim soldiers who had participated, the Indian Muslim soldiers who had participated. And they invited the leaders of important Muslim countries to come and inaugurate the mosque. So Great Britain, the West, at that time the supreme Western power, it was encouraging pan-Islamic forces, against the Indian independence movement. There is a theological reason for this because they find it very easy to support, they find it very easy to understand the Muslims. They are worshipping one God who doesn't have any shape, and they have one book, and they have a very clear notion of who is the kafir and who is the mu'min. And so these people are well-defined people. Let us support them. That is at one level. At another level, remember when visa was denied to Narendra Modi? That was exactly the time when United States was killing Muslims in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? So denying visa to Narendra Modi was a kind of signal to the Islamists telling, okay, see, we are fighting with you, but in your fight against those infidels, we are going to be with you. Okay, so that is at our next level. Then you have the third level where there are business interests. There is one magazine called Foreign Policy Magazine, in which they said that the American corporate companies, they would love ISIS to create a big Islamic empire, because that would create one single zone for the US corporates to come and operate. So, three levels. You find that the West will always side with the Islamists and not with the Hindus. Unless otherwise Hindus become a very strong nation. Okay. Even if you become a strong nation, they will be against you. I will give you the example of Israel. Outside, everybody thinks that Israel is supported by United States. Right. But actually what is happening? When the Palestine issue came, all the liberal forces in the West, they at once went and embraced the Palestine issue. Just think about it, why? Because previously you can be openly anti-Semitic. You can openly say that the Jews are the worst scum, they are the conspiring people, they are conspirators, they are the killers of Jesus. But after the Second World War, you cannot tell that. The environment has changed, the mindset has changed. So once you get the Palestine issue, with the help of Palestine issue, you can reanimate the entire anti-Semitism. The same way, in the colonial world, you can talk about Hindus being satanic, Hindus worshipping the idols, and the Hindus are being in the darkness and they are going to burn in hell forever. But in the post-colonial world, you cannot do that. So you will embrace the secular reasons to demonize Hindus. One of the secular reasons is this, that the Hindus are harassing the Muslims. And who are the Muslims? After all, Muslims are Abrahamic people. So these are the Hindus who are worshipping the swastika, which is the Nazi symbol, and they are attacking the Muslims who are wearing the skull caps. So now you have the same thing. The Nazis attacking Jews, the Hindus attacking Muslims. The images are very similar. You can play upon it, and then you can damn the Hindus. So the United States will always encourage the Islamic bodies to fight against Hindus. The most important aspect in all this is this acts as a safety valve for the United States. See, if you are going to channelize all your jihad into Kashmir, then you are not going to have bomb blasts in Afghanistan, in the US bases. You are not going to have planes going into the Twin Towers in New York. All you have to do is you have to channelize all the jihadi enemy, all the jihadi energy into the Kashmir jihad, or the jihad against Hindus at large. So that is the last important thing. Given all this organizations coming up, the Indian Muslim Association of United States, or the Council for Muslim Fraternity in United States, all these coming up, it is because the US is allowing it. And the US is allowing it with a very clear plan. Whenever they want to attack us, they can use this. So this is not a something that is growing in a very natural way. It is not even because of the Islamic clout. It is because the United States by design is allowing this to happen. And we have to be very clear about it.
Arvindanji, I would now like to come to the role played by activists, intellectuals, and other groups of people in influencing bodies such as USCIRF. You mentioned about the Nexus, which has been around for so many years. And again, what I would like to do is just take a few minutes to talk about maybe some of the key players here. Now, the 2020 annual report of the Commission mentions the International Religious Freedom Roundtable, which has 28 roundtables, including one for India. The India Roundtable has 3 co-chairs. There is John Prabhudas, who is the chairman of Indian American Christian Organization, Raju Rajagopal, Board of Directors for Hindus for Human Rights, and Ajit Sahi, who is the Advocacy Director for IAMC, the Indian American Muslim Council. So let me come to this Hindus for Human Rights, whose advisory board has people like T.M. Krishna, Rajmohan Gandhi, Faisal Khan, and Amina Ahmed, who is a youth leader in IAMC and is behind Art as Resistance in honor of Shaheen Bagh. Hindus for Human Rights has stood for anti-CAA protests, justified farmer riots, and has vocally supported Audrey Truschke for her anti-Hindu stance. One of the partners of Hindus for Human Rights is IAMC, and in an event that was co-sponsored by Hindus for Human Rights last year, titled The Present Situation of India, the speakers were Mahua Moitra, Sid Varadarajan, and Ajit Sahi. Now, Ajit Sahi was a journalist with Tehelka and known for his views defending Simi, and he seems to be an active fellow. In a brief to International Christian Concerns, which Sahi claims as close to IAMC, he talks about the worrying influence of the Hindu right wing in the US. IAMC itself cites the work of people like Audrey Truschke, Pramila Jaipal, Rana Ayub, and Arfa Khanum, among others. In 2008, IAMC conferred the Tipu Sultan Award to Angana Chatterjee for courageously serving India, their words. Angana Chatterjee, Arvindanji, has been covered in much detail in Breaking India too, so I will not add much except that according to the Disinfo Labs report, she was with Nadine Maenza, who is the commissioner for USCIRF in a company called Hardwired Global. Ajit Sahi is also a part of the editorial collective of Quill Foundation, which includes people like Harsh Mandar, Dharam Puri, and Saba Naqvi, among others. And Sahi could be one of the key persons behind the USCIRF reports. Now, the commission itself, in March of last year, had a hearing on citizenship laws and religious freedom, in which were invited Professor Ashutosh Varshni, besides Saman Vadud, a lawyer in Assam, and Azim Ibrahim, Center for Global Policy. This sort of goes back to what you talked about, the academia part. And we recently also saw Rahul Gandhi's interview with Professor Ashutosh Varshni. The USCIRF itself also sources its news through media reports from New York Times, Washington Post, Al Jazeera, Scroll, Wire, and so on. Many of these known for their anti-Hindu and anti-India stance. And in one of their earlier reports, Arvindanji, you also talked about the visa ban on Prime Minister Modi. So the commission mentions that this is a direct result of their recommendations under the IRFA, and this had come about through a consistent influence from the global network. In fact, the commission recommended a similar ban on Amit Shah following the CAA. So you have covered in Breaking India the global network in chilling details. Certainly, I would recommend our audience to read the book for more details. But I just wanted to highlight the network as we know it today. It seems to be getting stronger. So the question, Arvindanji, I would like to ask is, how does this sort of work within what is happening today in terms of toppling the Modi government and their hatred against the Hindus in general? How do you think this is going to play out?
See, right now, one thing that we have to understand in all this is this. When Vajpayee government was in place, for the first time, a pro-Hindu government was in place. It was not anti-Hindu government. Okay. Even it was not so proactively pro-Hindu, it was not anti-Hindu government. In fact, being not anti-Hindu itself is for them very wrong thing. So from that point onwards, what happens is you becoming anti-BJP, you becoming anti-Hindu is a thing that will pay you in your career. It will elevate you in your career. If you look at the way the media started changing after BJP came to power, this is something that you have to very clearly understand. BJP comes to power, and then the anti-BJP forces, anti-Hindu forces, they get a boost in their career. Now look at the way the things started playing out. Okay, for example, Vajpayee understood certain things very, very clearly, very strongly. So what he did was he made Bangaru Lakshman, it was his recommendation that made Bangaru Lakshman the head of BJP, national head of BJP, remember that. And what it did was, it made a checkmate to those who said that the BJP is an anti-Dalit party, it is a Brahminical party, upper caste party. It was a big blow. How did they react? How did they react? How the Tehalka functioned. The Tehalka does not go at once into anti-BJP mood. The Tehalka first created a kind of a credibility for it by exposing the cricket scam. So once it exposed the cricket scam, it got a credibility that whatever it exposes is going to be true. And then it went for the jugular, it went for Bangaru Lakshman. So after Bangaru Lakshman was dethroned, now it is very easy to project BJP as the so-called Brahminical anti-Dalit party. Then what happened? Look at all those discussion panels that happened in NDTV when Rajdeep Sardesai was in CNN again, for example. By the way, Rajdeep Sardesai was a brand ambassador for World Vision. Okay, he was a brand ambassador for World Vision. Now, in all these discussions, if you look, you will find that they purposefully invite anti-Hindu people as if they are neutral spokesperson. Like for example, Magesh Bhatt. He would be coming and sitting as a film director, an eminent citizen. But actually all he talks will be venomously anti-Hindu. Kancha Ilaya would be invited. If you look at the entire TV programs, the discussion panels, you will find a lot of Kancha Ilaya brought in. You will find the NCDHR. NCDHR is National Commission for Dalit Human Rights. A very secular sounding organization, but actually a Christian organization. Paul Divakar was in charge. And then he would be brought in. And they would all spit venom against Hinduism. They would, not directly, but they would do it. The entire society is oppressive and all that. So they created this mindset. And once this mindset is created, the people who create this mindset will be rewarded. This was the ecosystem they were building right under the nose of BJP rule. And BJP couldn't do anything because BJP was too democratic. And number two, see, all said and done, we are a religion of a developing nation and a post-colonial society. These people, whether it is the anti-Hindu forces in NDTV or whether it is anti-Hindu forces like Rajdeep Sardesai, they are being fed by the surplus of the colonial powers. Right? So what happens is these people, whether the BJP is in power, they will grow. They will grow because they will project themselves as the one they are fighting against the BJP to the colonial masters. When the BJP is not in power, the UPA would create a situation in which they would grow. They would be given the Padma Awards, for example. Okay. Now, for first time, the BJP has actually democratized the Padma Awards. But remember, Banka Dutt was given the Padma Award. Right? So, this kind of rewarding system would be there. And this is the ecosystem they have built. Okay. Now, take TM Krishna. A very good example. Now, TM Krishna, he talks about democratizing the music system, taking the traditional Carnatic music to the subaltern people, etc., etc. Okay. Now, if you look actually at the traditional music system in South India, you will find there are a lot of non-Brahmins who had contributed to this. It was a very democratic system. It was a very cost-effective system because it was being sung in the temples. And in the temples, anybody can come and they can listen to these music concerts. There is no caste barriers. Anybody can come and they can listen to these music concerts. So this was a very democratic, cost-effective system. When they secularized the music, took it out of the temples and put it into the halls of the cities, made it into an urban phenomenon, then it became went into the hands of those people who were the elite of the urban cities. They are the secular elite. And Mr. T.M. Krishna, he comes from this secular elite, using all the advantages of that secular elite, who are basically derooted from the culture, and then he says that he is going to take it to the people. Who made it elitist? It is these people who removed it from the culture who made it elitist, but now he would put the blame on the Hindu culture. Once you put the blame on the Hindu culture, you will get all kinds of awards. You will get all kinds of awards. You will get all kinds of international recognitions. And once you fall into this, then you would go into more and more anti-Hindu buffoonery. And for every anti-Hindu buffoonery, you will be rewarded more and more. And once you have understood that this is a very profitable profession and your throat is never being slit when you are talking against Hinduism, at the most what will happen is that you will be getting abused by some Twitter trolls. This is where it gets very interesting. See what bad name that Islam does not get through 1001 bombing and 3001 beheading. Hinduism will be made to get that bad name through a few bad tweets. Okay, so you can abuse Hinduism, you will never have the problem that Salman Rushdie had to undergo, and yet you can play martyr. You can play martyr for freedom of expression. So this is a very profitable career. Come to think about it. Very profitable career. So no wonder the T.M. Krishna and Varshinis are flocking into that direction. And so the colonial masters who are rewarding these people, they have their own sinister game. That game is of course breaking India. If it is not breaking India, it is at least weakening India and evangelizing the Hindus. Right. So the USIRF will always use this type of people as resource persons. But you will never see a person belonging to the indigenous tradition going and standing there. If a so-called Dalit is to go and stand there, then he has to be westernized before going and standing there. He cannot be a Hindu scheduled community person who goes and tells that the crypto Christians who are using the SC certificates, but at the same time they are Christians, they are coming and they are encroaching upon my rights in this country. He can never be allowed to say that because that is the design. So these forces will be used very much in propaganda against Modi. Of course, Modi government cannot be toppled, but Modi would be, they would love to defeat Modi in the next coming election. Then it is not the defeat of Modi that is important. Then they will use that defeat to create a psychological effect on the Hindus as if it is a civilizational defeat of entire Hinduism in the hands of the Abrahamic forces. That is what they will love.
That's very well said. And, in fact, what I would like to ask, we talked about what they might do to the Modi government. But what I would also like to ask is, what do you think could be the role of the Indian government in today addressing this interference that is coming from bodies like USCIRF? And maybe a related question, we are talking about the Hindu civilization. And do you think a proper propagation of the values represented by the Hindu civilization, by Sanatana Dharma, could actually play a role here in terms of addressing this kind of interference that we are getting from global organizations and global networks?
Yes. See, we have our works cut out for us, but I have a strong feeling that we are failing our posterity. One of the very negative things that I find with respect to the entire Hindu ecosystem is that we tend to blame the present government because it is not Hindu enough, it is not Dharmic enough, etc., etc. Now, let me be very blunt about this. Here is a government that is under which the Ram temple has materialized. Here is a government under which the Article 370 has been removed and Kashmir has been finally integrated with India. Here is a government in which a lot of Hindu think tanks have at last emerged, right? So the government hasn't done a lot of things. Of course, it hasn't changed the syllabus. We have been discussing about it right here in this forum. The government has a lot of omissions and this with respect to the temple getting out, with the government getting out of the temple, and all that kind of things. Yes, but we have to understand one thing. The presence of this government is a buffer time for us to create the kind of systems that will last even if the government is gone. That is what we have to do. And one of that is creating an international indigenous religions freedom report. Now, you take United States. In United States, what is the kind of freedom that the indigenous religious people are enjoying? For how many years they were not allowed to practice their religion? How many propaganda materials are there that still glorify the cowboys and they still caricature the Native Americans? We have to make a study of that and we have to come out with a report. We have to talk about the land rights of the indigenous communities around the world, whether it is in Australia, whether it is in New Zealand, because Hinduism is the only long-lasting, long-standing pagan culture that can validate the natural spirituality of Australian Aborigines or the South American Amazon tribe people. Okay, we don't seek to convert them. We see them all as equally spiritual. So the very fact that we exist, we validate the indigenous spiritual traditions of global indigenous communities. So it is our right to, it is our responsibility to create a freedom of religion report for these people, a real freedom of religion report that takes into account things like exclusivism, things like, recently I read a book by Professor Arvind Sharma and I reviewed it. It is called A History of Religious Tolerance and he talks about exclusivism, inclusivism and pluralism. Okay. Now, even in this exclusivism, inclusivism and pluralism, Hindu Dharma has, Dharmic people have their own vision of inclusivism and exclusivism and pluralism. Okay. Now, in the case of Christianity and Islam, what we do is, okay, they are religious, they exist on their own right. We are not going to criticize them unless otherwise they are coming and proselytizing. If they are not proselytizing us, we are not going to go and check the historicity of Jesus. We are not going to find out what kind of, he who should not be cartooned, whether his mental makeup should be studied. We are not going to look into those things, right? But once they come and they proselytize, they attack us, then we go and attack them. Otherwise, we don't attack them, we leave them. So that is the kind of exclusivism we show. When it comes to inclusivism, we say that all the indigenous religions, they all go to the same spirituality. They all manifest the same divinity. That's the kind of inclusivism we have. And we allow pluralism also. We recognize pluralism. Okay. We believe in unity in diversity. So based on these things, we can create our own reports. We can create our own reports on the religious rights and the land rights. We can create a report on their cultural rights, on the ethnobotanical rights, the indigenous knowledge systems of these people, how they are getting stolen by pharmaceutical companies. We can create reports. We have to create these reports. And every year we have to publish this report. That is number one. Number two, we have to create our own Hindu human rights reports for every district in India. And then it should be published by every year. This district-wise report should be collected and it should be published in a national event by a apex body like Hindu Dharma Acharya Sabha. It should be submitted to the UN. The kind of atrocities, the kind of transgressions that the proselytizing religions are creating in India, how the families are getting asunder because of these conversions, what kind of conversion material they are using. For example, take an ordinary pamphlet, ordinary Christian pamphlet, conversion proselytizing pamphlet. It says that idol worship is a sin like adultery. Now my parents do idol worship, I do idol worship. When somebody comes and gives me a pamphlet, when I'm going in the road telling that my form of worship is a sin like adultery, is it not a violation of human rights? It is not the violation of the sanctity of the public space. Is it not violation of secularism? When you write in the road that Jesus is the only savior, Jesus is the only living God, does that mean Allah is dead? So when they are doing all these things, in a country like India, there is no report to monitor these things and report them in an international body. We have to do that. So you have to create an international report, you have to create a national report, and that national report should be a collation of district-wise reports, and this has to be done in a very professional way. This is the way to counteract these people. So if USIRF report is there, which is a crime against humanity, you should have a report that will heal humanity. So that is how we have to approach this.
So Aravindanji, so essentially the way out, even though as you very rightly said that it's quite late, but still the way out would be to really look at a report for human rights of Hindus, as well as extend it to the indigenous civilizations that are across the world. So with that, we come to a close of our conversation. Thank you so much for the insightful answers, Aravindanji. And I hope that I hope that for our audience, this would provide a much needed perspective on how religious groups within the US and the global network are working in tandem and what we could actually do about them. So with that, we close. Namaste, everyone.
Thank you.